Most people don't have a money problem, they have a buried talent problem. And the truth is, God didn't design you to live paycheck to paycheck. You're stuck in debt not because heaven is closed, but because your gift is. And here's the uncomfortable truth no one tells you. The longer you ignore what God placed inside you, the longer you stay in financial chains He never intended for you. I know it sounds crazy, but maybe you don't need another loan, another job, or another hustle. Maybe all you need is to activate the one thing God already gave you, the very thing you've been underestimating. The Bible doesn't say the wicked servant spent the talent, it says he buried it. And that silence, that fear, that delay, it cost him everything. In this video, I'm going to show you how your breakthrough isn't tied to winning the lottery. It's tied to using what you've been calling not enough. If you've ever wondered why the money never seems to stretch, why your business isn't growing, or why your prayers feel unanswered, this might be the key you've been missing. And once you see it, you'll never go back to survival mode again. God gave you a talent, but you're treating it like it's nothing. Many people pray for a financial miracle but ignore the gift God already placed inside them. It's not just an artistic flair or technical skill, it's a tool for provision. The problem isn't the absence of talent, it's the silent disregard you've shown for what God entrusted you with. The parable of the talents starts with a non-negotiable truth. God gave something to each and every one, no exceptions. If you're breathing, you've been given something, and that something is the seed of your sustenance. But what happens when you see your gift is too ordinary? You stop watering it. You bury it. The servant who buried his talent wasn't just wicked because of fear. He was wicked because he despised the value of what he received. Treating lightly what the King of the universe placed in your hands is far more serious than it looks. Imagine if Bezalel, the spirit-filled artist in Exodus 31, had said, "This is just woodwork, it's not special." Or if Paul had dismissed his teaching ability thinking, "Everyone already talks about God." Nothing is small when it comes directly from the hand of God. The problem is, the world taught you that if your gift doesn't bring fast money, it's worthless. But the kingdom sees it differently. Greatness is born in faithfulness to small things. Here's a practical example. Imagine a woman who's naturally gifted with children. She never saw that as a calling. But when she offered it to God, it became a daycare business that now provides for dozens of families. That talent became a way out. Or someone who cooks with excellence and turns that into a thriving local food venture. Nothing changed, except the way they saw what was already in their hands. The enemy doesn't need to steal your house, just your perspective. As long as you think you have nothing, you'll keep digging holes instead of building bridges. And here's the truth that changes everything. God never asked you to invent a talent. He asked you to recognize and multiply what He already gave you. The very thing you've been overlooking is what He intends to use to break your debt chains. If you can't honor what God gave you now, how will you recognize it when He gives you more? The path to financial freedom doesn't begin with winning the lottery. It begins with honoring the gift that's been buried in you for years. And if this already sounds challenging, just wait until you see what happens when you start using that gift for real. You're asking for money while sitting on the gift that makes it. It's a strange thing. So many believers cry out to God for more money, yet completely overlook the gift that produces it. You pray for increase, but keep ignoring the seed. The truth is, you're not waiting on God. He's waiting on you to recognize that your provision is already embedded inside your purpose. The servant who multiplied what he received didn't wait for more. He used what he had. That's where everything changes. We live in a generation where people want the harvest without sowing the seed. They want money, business success, and financial overflow, but they neglect the very tool God gave them to unlock it. That tool isn't always flashy. Sometimes it's your voice, your ability to organize, your empathy, your strategic mind. Proverbs 18:16 says, "A man's gift makes room for him and brings him before great men." The gift brings the room, not the hustle. God doesn't answer every prayer by raining down money. Most of the time, He answers by pointing to the gift you're ignoring. You asked for provision, but He gave you a vision. You asked for money, but He gave you a business idea. You asked for a way out of debt, but He gave you an ability that solves problems. And problems are always paid. The question is, have you been stewarding what solves problems? Here's something to try right now. List 3 things people naturally ask you to help with. Those aren't random. They're often connected to your God-given design. Maybe you bake better than most, or explain things with unusual clarity, or bring calm to chaotic teams. That's not a hobby, that's a signal. And God isn't hiding your provision. He's hiding it in you. You just haven't been looking at it like a resource yet. If you sit on a gift, it doesn't multiply. It depreciates. And that's what's happened for many. The gift has gone dormant because it's never been used. What could have become an income stream was treated like a side note. But in the kingdom, everything multiplies when surrendered. A fisherman becomes a world changer. A tent maker becomes a church planter. A carpenter becomes the savior of the world. The pattern never changes. So if you've been stuck, frustrated and broke, stop asking when God will show up and start asking what God already gave you. Because you might be praying for something that's sitting right under your nose. And when you finally start activating that gift, it starts changing everything. Why playing it safe? Is what's keeping you broke. God never called his people to live in fear-based decisions. And yet, so many believers operate with a play-it-safe mindset that sounds responsible but is secretly rooted in fear. The servant who buried his talent didn't lose it, but he also didn't grow it. Playing it safe isn't spiritual wisdom. In fact, in the kingdom, safety without obedience is disobedience. There's a fine line between stewardship and stagnation, and many are stuck in the latter. You think avoiding risk is wise, but let's be honest. Your safe zone is really just a prison with nice curtains. You've convinced yourself that not starting the business, not switching jobs, not asking for more is being wise, but that wisdom isn't from above. James 1:5 tells us that godly wisdom is pure, peaceable, and actionable. True wisdom leads to movement. The enemy's favorite tactic is to convince you that security is better than obedience. Faith always requires risk. Abraham left his homeland not knowing where he was going. Peter stepped out of the boat in the middle of a storm. The woman with the alabaster jar broke what was costly without knowing if she'd be judged. The Bible is a story of people who moved, not people who stayed where it was comfortable. And God rewarded their faith, not their caution. Here's the financial trap. You think being ultra-conservative with your money is faithfulness. But hoarding what you have, refusing to invest in your growth, never taking a leap, that's not biblical stewardship. That's fear with a religious label. You can budget forever and still never multiply. Because multiplication only comes from movement. And business, any kind of business, requires boldness. Let's get practical. Have you ever passed up an opportunity because you were scared of what might happen? Did you not take that course, launch that product, or speak up with your idea? Just in case? That hesitation is costing more than you think. It's not just missed money. It's missed moments, missed mentorships, missed miracles. Playing it safe feels smart until you realize you've been stuck for 5 years. And here's what God wants you to hear. He didn't design you to hide behind what-ifs. He designed you to move by faith. Playing it safe might keep your hands clean, but it also keeps them empty. And until you learn how to walk in obedience even when it feels risky, you'll keep mistaking safety for provision. And never experience the overflow. Debt isn't the root, it's the fruit of burying your gift. Debt doesn't appear out of nowhere. It's not the problem, it's a symptom. A symptom of ignoring the gifts God gave you. The servant in Matthew 25 who buried his talent wasn't just playing it safe. He was cutting himself off from divine provision. When you stop using what God gave you, you start relying on systems that were never meant to sustain you. Debt grows in silence, in the absence of activated purpose. The world teaches you to borrow when you feel lack. Heaven teaches you to build with what's already in your hand. The widow in 2 Kings 4 cried out over her debts, and Elisha didn't hand her coins. He asked, "What do you have in your house?" That question was the key. She had oil, and that oil, once poured, became her way out. God never multiplies nothing. He multiplies what's already present, but it must be poured. When you ignore your God-given talent, you're not just wasting time, you're digging a financial pit. You start swiping cards and taking loans to fund a lifestyle your purpose could have covered. Business becomes survival instead of mission. Money becomes a trap instead of a tool. And before you know it, debt isn't just a number, it's a master. Proverbs 22:7 warns that the borrower becomes slave to the lender. God didn't call you to slavery. He called you to stewardship. Now hear this clearly. Debt is not always a sign of sin, but it is a sign of misalignment. Somewhere along the way, something got out of order. Maybe fear made you bury your voice. Maybe shame kept you from writing the book. Maybe procrastination kept you from offering your skill. Whatever it was, that buried talent created a void. And debt rushed in to fill it. So what can you do today? Take inventory. What gifts are you hiding under the rug while asking God to cancel the debt? It might sound tough, but the freedom that you're praying for isn't just in His mercy, it's in your movement. Start small if you have to. Sell your service, launch the page, offer help in your area of gifting. God isn't looking for flashy, He's looking for faithful. And if you're wondering why things feel stuck financially, this might be it. Debt can't survive where purpose is active. And when you dig up that buried gift, things start shifting, in your wallet and in your walk. Multiplication is a command, not a suggestion. From the beginning, God's instruction was clear: be fruitful and multiply. That wasn't just about children, it was a divine principle embedded in every area of life, including business, including money, including the talents He placed in you. The parable of the talents makes it obvious. Multiplication isn't optional, it's expected. The master didn't ask the servants to preserve what they had. He expected growth. Too many believers confuse being safe with being obedient. But in the kingdom, faithfulness means fruitfulness. When Jesus cursed the fig tree in Mark 11, it wasn't because it was evil, it was because it had no fruit. That moment reveals God's heart. Where there's potential, He expects production. And if He placed something in your hands, He's watching to see what you'll do with it. Multiplication is part of your spiritual DNA. That's why stagnation feels so suffocating. You weren't built for it. Whether it's 2 talents or 5, whether you're a solopreneur or managing a company, the goal is the same: grow what God gave you. That doesn't mean hustle without rest or chasing every opportunity. It means multiplying with intention, by using your talent with excellence, vision, and trust. Here's where this hits home. If you're only maintaining, you're already losing. Inflation eats savings, trends outpace businesses, skills decay if they aren't sharpened. Even your confidence weakens when you're not stretching it. That's why Jesus didn't celebrate the one who protected his talent. He judged him, because preservation isn't kingdom. Progress is. Think about this. A farmer who stores seed forever never sees a harvest, but the one who risks planting multiplies. The same goes for your God-given abilities. If you've been sitting on an idea, procrastinating on a plan, or constantly starting and stopping, you're delaying the very multiplication you were born for. Heaven doesn't bless passivity, it blesses purpose in motion. And maybe you've been living like multiplication is for other people, for pastors or influencers or people with perfect resumes. But in the kingdom, multiplication is your calling, your responsibility, your inheritance. And the moment you start taking it seriously, your finances will begin to reflect it. God doesn't bless what you bury. He blesses what you build. It's a sobering truth. The servant who buried his talent didn't lose it, but still got rebuked. Why? Because God doesn't bless potential. He blesses progress. He doesn't respond to intentions. He responds to obedience. You can pray all day for provision, but if you keep hiding the very thing that could unlock it, heaven won't move. Blessing follows action. Favor flows where faith is moving. Think of Noah. God didn't say, "I'll send the rain first, then you build the ark." No, Noah had to build before he saw the flood. In the same way, you don't wait for a breakthrough to start. You build toward it. Too many believers bury their gifts in prayer closets, waiting on confirmation, when God already gave the instruction: multiply. Do business until I return, said Jesus in Luke 19:13. That's not a suggestion, that's kingdom order. Let's bring this into your world. You may have a voice that inspires, a mind that organizes, or a skill that solves real problems. But if you're waiting until it's perfect to use it, you're burying it. Burying doesn't just mean hiding, it also means delaying. Perfectionism is just another name for procrastination dressed in spiritual clothing. And God can't bless what you won't build. Now let's be clear, building doesn't mean overnight success. It means movement. It means taking your idea, your talent, your solution, and putting it to work, one faithful step at a time. Maybe that looks like launching a service. Maybe it's creating that first online post. Maybe it's applying for the opportunity you've been avoiding. It doesn't have to be flashy. It just has to start. And if you failed before, that doesn't disqualify you. In fact, it qualifies you even more. God doesn't require a perfect track record. He honors the heart that gets back up. David failed. Peter denied. Paul persecuted. But all of them built. All of them moved. And all of them were blessed, not because they buried, but because they obeyed. So ask yourself, are you expecting God to bless a blueprint you refuse to build? The servant didn't get judged for losing money. He got judged for doing nothing. You don't need more favor, you need more faithfulness. And when you start building, even in small steps, you'll find that God was just waiting to meet you at the first move. If you're not managing the little, don't expect the overflow. Many believers ask for overflow, but they haven't mastered the basics. They pray for promotion without stewardship. But kingdom increase never bypasses responsibility. In Luke 16:10, Jesus said, "Whoever is faithful with little will also be faithful with much." That's not a cute proverb. That's a divine system. You're not waiting on overflow. Overflow is waiting on your management. Let's talk real. If you can't budget $500, how will you steward $5,000? If you don't tithe with little, will you tithe with much? Faithfulness doesn't magically appear when more arrives. It's developed now. In the struggle, in the discipline, in the decisions nobody sees. This is why some people feel stuck. It's not a lack of opportunity, it's a lack of preparation. The delay isn't denial, it's training. Look at Joseph. Before he managed Egypt's economy, he managed a prison well. Before he was trusted with Pharaoh's dreams, he was faithful in interpreting a baker's nightmare. He didn't wait for a title to be excellent. That's what God promotes. Not potential, but preparation. Money responds to order. Business responds to clarity. The kingdom responds to stewardship. Little isn't punishment, it's proving ground. Here's a simple practice. Track every dollar. Every single one. Know where it's going? Tell it where to go instead of wondering where it went. That level of stewardship might feel tedious now, but it trains your soul for greater capacity. You can't manage what you don't monitor, and you can't multiply what you refuse to manage. Don't confuse lack of overflow with lack of favor. God often withholds more out of love, knowing that giving you more before you're ready would crush you, not bless you. That's not delay. That's protection. You wouldn't give a child a chainsaw. Neither does the Father give abundance to someone still careless with seed. So if you've been asking, "God, where's my breakthrough?" ask instead, "How have I managed what I already have?" Because when stewardship meets faith, heaven opens. But that requires humility, discipline, and a willingness to handle the small like it matters. Because to God, it always does. Wealth transfer is already happening. Are you in position? Most people think wealth transfer is a future event, something that'll happen one day. But according to the kingdom, it's already in motion. Proverbs 13:22 says, "The wealth of the wicked is stored up for the righteous." That's not a metaphor. It's a promise. But promises have prerequisites. Wealth doesn't flow toward the passive. It flows toward the prepared. Look around. The world is moving fast. Industries rise and fall. Currencies shift. Opportunities appear and vanish in a scroll. While some are scrolling, others are building. That's wealth transfer. It's not just about money changing hands. It's about influence, assets, platforms, and open doors being passed from the distracted to the diligent. And if you're not positioned, you'll miss it, even while praying for it. So how do you position yourself? First, sharpen your gift. Get so excellent in what God gave you that your name enters rooms before you do. Second, be available. Opportunities flow to people who are ready to move, not those still getting ready. Third, obey quickly. Delayed obedience is disobedience in disguise. Sometimes God's open door has an expiration date. Let's make it real. Think of the servant who had 5 talents. He immediately went to work. He didn't overthink. He didn't wait for signs. He moved. And that's why he multiplied. Meanwhile, the one who buried his gift lost what little he had. The kingdom has a law. What isn't used will be reassigned. Wealth is never static. It shifts. And the question isn't, will God move? It's, will you be where the move lands? You don't need a miracle to get in position. You need discipline. Study your industry. Learn the trends. Build the habit. Make the phone call. Launch the idea. Wealth is not hiding. It's moving. And the faster you move in faith, the more you align with its path. Many Christians are waiting for a transfer while God is waiting for a trigger. Action is the trigger. So ask yourself honestly, if God were to open the door today, would you be ready? Because readiness isn't about perfection, it's about posture. And if you want to receive what's being transferred, you have to stop wishing and start walking. Fear looks safe, but it costs more than you think. Fear always disguises itself as wisdom. It whispers, wait until you're ready, or now isn't the right time. But the truth is, fear is expensive. It has a high price tag, and most people don't realize they've been paying for it with missed opportunities, stagnant seasons, and wasted gifts. The servant in Matthew 25 said, "I was afraid, so I hid your talent." That's the whole tragedy. Not failure, but fear. Let's be honest. Fear feels responsible. It feels protective. But in the kingdom, fear that stops action is not protection. It's disobedience. God has not given you a spirit of fear, 2 Timothy 1:7, which means every time you let fear dictate your financial decisions, you are moving under a spirit God never sent. It's not caution, it's captivity. And many are budgeting their lives around what they're afraid to lose, instead of what they were born to build. Think about it. How many things have you delayed or denied because of fear? That application, that conversation, that investment, that launch. Each one looked risky. But how much has inaction already cost you? The irony is that the longer you avoid risk, the more life quietly drains your potential. There's a silent price tag on staying still, and it's often greater than the price of trying and failing. Here's a truth you can't ignore. Fear doesn't just freeze your feet, it fogs your faith. It convinces you that comfort equals safety, and that the unknown equals danger. But faith lives in the unknown. Abraham didn't get the full map. Peter didn't get floaties. David didn't get armor. They moved anyway. And God met them in motion, not in hesitation. It's time to name your fear. Call it out. Is it fear of failure, of being judged, of making a mistake? Good news, God can handle all of that. He's not asking you to never be afraid. He's asking you to move in spite of it. That's real courage. That's obedience. And that's where breakthrough happens, right at the edge of discomfort. Because what you'll discover is this: fear may feel safer in the moment, but it costs you your future. And when you finally step past it, you realize God was never waiting on the money. He was waiting on you to move. The talent you activate today will feed generations tomorrow. Your talent was never just about you. What God placed in you is designed to bless others, not only in the present, but for generations to come. The parable of the talents reveals a profound principle. Multiplication today creates inheritance tomorrow. When you activate what God gave you, you're building a foundation not just for income, but for impact. Think about this. Abraham's obedience didn't just bless him. It birthed a nation. Ruth's decision to stay with Naomi didn't just give her a new husband. It positioned her in the lineage of Jesus. These weren't just faith moments. They were legacy moments. And your gift, no matter how ordinary it feels, has the potential to become legacy when placed in God's hands and faithfully developed. That skill you've been neglecting. It might be the key to breaking generational poverty, that idea you've been sitting on. It could create jobs for your community, that small business in your heart. It might teach your children how to live by faith and not fear. When you activate your gift, you're not just making money, you're making history. Kingdom business is never small. It echoes. The Bible is full of generational patterns, blessings and curses. Exodus 20 talks about iniquities passing down to the third and fourth generation, but also God showing mercy to thousands of generations of those who love Him. What you activate today changes tomorrow's spiritual and financial landscape. That's why it's not just about debt freedom, it's about destiny alignment. Here's a practical check-in. What would happen if your children handled money exactly the way you do? Would they be empowered or enslaved? What if they followed your example in using gifts? Would they bury or build? These questions matter. Because you're not just building a bank account, you're modeling kingdom principles. And what they see becomes what they repeat. So stop seeing your talent as optional, it's your assignment. And the moment you take it seriously, you begin to shift atmospheres in your home, your finances, and your future. Because when God gives you a seed, He's thinking about the harvest and the generations that will eat from it. If you've made it this far, then deep down, you know God gave you something unique, something valuable. And now the question isn't if you've been gifted, it's what you're going to do about it. Because the truth is, ignoring that gift has a cost. And using it? That might be the key to breaking every financial chain the enemy tried to wrap around your family. So what would happen if you stopped waiting for the right time and started using what's already in your hand? What would shift in your money, your purpose, your mindset, if you treated your talent like God Himself gave it to you? Because He did. The difference between stuck and free might just be one faithful decision. Write in the comments, "I refuse to bury what God gave me," And watch how this powerful declaration begins to shift the course of your business and your finances from this day forward. And if this message stirred something in you, if it opened your eyes, challenged your thinking, or reminded you that God hasn't forgotten your calling, consider sowing into this ministry through the link in the description. Your support helps us keep delivering truth, hope, and strategy rooted in the Word of God. Don't forget to subscribe, turn on the notifications, and share this with someone who's sitting on a buried talent and doesn't even realize it. Your obedience might be the nudge they need.